Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and man, I've got to talk some of you Steelers fans off of the ledge. Don't jump in a 24-10 loss 3 weeks into the season. This time to the Cincinnati Bengals, the Steelers fall to 1-2, and it's not quite the end of the world as we know it. So, no, Brian isn't a bandwagoner, and Brian isn't scared or to come on the show or anything like that. We just couldn't get on the same page for this episode once again, so I apologize. I'm here and long-winded, but plenty of good notes and hopefully some good takes. I'm equally as disgusted and frustrated and disappointed 3 weeks into the season as most of yins are, but maybe not to the point of I'm ready to call it quits, let the ship sail, whatever else. I'm also not blaming certain individual items here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe all of this stuff is still fixable, and I think some people just tend to forget that when you have certain backup players in certain roles and certain injuries and certain new players and rookies and all of these other different new moving parts, it's going to take some time, let alone the fact that September football typically ugly. I tweeted out something not too long ago to the same effect, and basically what I was saying was it's the usual suspects here. Mike Tomlin with the Steelers 1-2, Andy Reid in the Kansas City Chiefs, although you wouldn't believe this going into the season. I get it, they got Patty Mahomes, man. They're 1-2. It's still the same record. Doesn't matter. It's not horseshoes and hand grenades. It's the only place where that close even matters there. The Chiefs' defense hasn't been looking too swell. The New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, he's got a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones. They're 1-2. And then the Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll. I always compare the Seahawks and Steelers quite frequently. Also 1-2. And I have reason to believe that all of these coaches can and will. They're going to be in it when we're down into December. All four of these teams are going to be a part of this. Nobody was picking the Carolina Panthers to be 3-0 over in the NFC South, over the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who lose their first game of the season. I mean, nobody was picking two teams ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs in their own division, undefeated, no less. Denver Broncos and Las Vegas Raiders both 3-0. It's been crazy, and this is parody in the NFL, and myself and the Professor Zach Meckler went over some of these things. For those of you who were with us during the summer, we went through all of the AFC North schedules with the opponents, the Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens, and we tried to tell everyone that 4 weeks in, it's very plausible that the Steelers are 2-2 or even 1-3, and everyone is going to talk about the sky falling. And we're just doing that looking on paper, you know what I mean? We predicted a loss with the Bills when we predicted a win with the Raiders and Bengals, although we did say the AFC North, there's going to be a lot of splits this year. You can't expect the Steelers to go 6-0 or 5-1 in this division with how improved all the teams are. We had them pretty much splitting with everyone, which would still get them to the goal line of a 10-6 record, which would maybe more than likely, with 7 teams making the playoffs, 10 wins, double digits, still enough to make it into the postseason. That's all you got to do. You got to get to the dance in order to be able to qualify to dance. So it's just one of those things where we kind of saw this coming. The strength of schedule is just insane. And there's nothing like I get it. It seems hopeless. You're going to go to Green Bay and face the Packers. You saw the Packers win in the last second game. It's still not hopeless. There's still things here that could be fixed. I know some of you just think you're absolutely crazy. You're always full of sunshine and rainbows. No, I was part of the Boo Birds at Heinz Field on Sunday. Man, I just never really realized that I would ever be a part of that. And I wasn't just caught up in the emotions. The Steelers did not earn anything on Sunday with their fan base. Okay, there were some empty seats there. That was a bit unfair. But man, when you're talking about like the 4th-and-1 play call or Eric Ebron dropping a pass that's right in the breadbasket, those are things that elicit a negative reaction. You have every right, and you're entitled to do so. But I'm more or less talking about everyone that's like on the ship of they're off the bandwagon. They're casual fans who just only pay attention and see, well, this is the Bungles. Part of the problem was not being able to get to Joe Burrow. The 75-game sack streak gone. And Joe Burrow is a much better quarterback than what the Bengals have had in the past. Is he still young? Yes. He's got a lot of young weapons. These receivers, Jamar Chase. I said it in the preview show. At the pregame show, I was under the impression that they may get TJ Watt. If TJ Watt plays and Melvin Ingram plays, it's not a problem. Having Watt and Alex Highsmith both out of there, they didn't even breathe on Joe Burrow. What do you think he's going to do when he has, Tyler Boyd? They still have Joe Mixon. I mean, they're still shutting down the defense, mind you. Still shutting some of these guys down. I know Mixon still got his overall. They started to try and chew some clock later in the game. He went to the tune of 18 carries for 90 yards. He had a 27-yard long that props that average up to 5-0. I get some of you are still a little upset with the Steelers' ability to run. I don't like the idea of Ben Roethlisberger attempting 58 passes when he's going into this game and everybody's like, oh, it's a pec injury. But that doesn't mean you replace the guy. Oh, where do I even start? Cam Newton? Because you have no faith now in Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins. All I heard about was Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins the entire offseason, the entire preseason, and then you got to see Haskins stinking up in a fourth preseason game. It doesn't mean that rates his career either. The other stuff we saw with Rudolph before, it doesn't mean it rates their career either. Is Mike Tomlin going to put either of those guys in over Ben Roethlisberger, who he's been riding with for 18 years? 18 years. And he's got a Hall of Fame resume, and he's got Super Bowl rings. You're not going to bench the guy. It's kind of like Sean Payton in New Orleans with Drew Brees. I don't know if Ben's got the noodle arm, but he doesn't have the noodle arm, but it's something in his head, or there was something maybe physical. Maybe he was feeling that on Sunday. Is the offensive line just getting him tattooed? There's instances where they need to be better, but I'm not going to say Stan Savran on the postgame show, he jumped off the cliff. I wasn't going to say it could be any better than last year, but it is, or any worse than last year. Last year's offensive line being worse than this year. There's no way it could be any worse. I've said those same words. I still don't believe that. I think that's just a really incredible hot take 3 weeks into the season with an offensive line, mind you. Chukwuekwuemeka, I get that he played right tackle last year, okay? He was supposed to be playing left tackle. They get all the way through training camp, and Zach Banner can't go. And Dan Moore, they're testing him out. We think Dan Moore is going to be stronger on the left side, and Chuk's stronger on the right. You're trying to limit your weaknesses. Kevin Dotson is still a first-time starter. Kendrick Green is a rookie. There's some people that unfairly say some things with Green. I thought Green's been okay. The penalties from some of these guys, false starts and whatnot, a lot of that is the cohesion. People are like, how long does it take to gel? They didn't have the training camp all together. Trey Turner wasn't out there all the time. Do you remember when Kevin Dotson was demoted on the depth? You remember that? He was demoted on the depth chart. How short a memory do some of you have? You can't even remember that Ben was playing with a pec injury. It drives me absolutely crazy. Of course, some of you are chuckling out there because I'm preaching to the choir. You deal with these same things with your water cooler discussion or trying to avoid Facebook and Twitter. You can't even avoid it just Monday and Tuesday anymore. You've got morons that are out here posting asking to trade for Deshaun Watson on Friday, or they're watching college football on Saturday, and it's like, pick out one of these schools, just throw a dart at the map of the United States. There's got to be a college there somewhere that has a quarterback that they think could be better than Big Ben, and they want him now. You're always planning for next year. Forget about this year. Now, they ain't winning nothing this year. Enjoy the season as it is, as it unfolds. I know, it's hard to enjoy this type of loss. The media, it's like they say whatever. They're talking, this Steelers team, that's who we thought stunk. They're going to hold to that narrative. We told you that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't going to be any good. No, you didn't. That third preseason game, he went out with a perfect quarterback rating. So what's going on here exactly? Does Ben have some discomfort? Is he second-guessing? He's been turning the ball over. This isn't anything new with Ben Roethlisberger or the Steelers offense. This goes back to Todd Haley, who, by the way, I got to bring up once again. I've said this before. There's people out there, they should have never let Mike Munchak go. I think Mike Munchak was a fine coach, but the Steelers finished 31st in rushing in 2018, Mike Munchak's final season, in that position with the Pittsburgh Steelers before he moves on to be with family, not to leave a sinking ship like a bunch of rats. He went to Denver because that's where his grandkids are. Okay, he has every right to do that. Football's a business. The guy, he had a very long career with Houston/Tennessee. That is very rare. People are all bouncing around, moving all over the league all the time. It is like a nomad job if you're a coach. If you're somewhere for 5 years, that's great. I mean, obviously. So Mike Munchak leaving, they didn't have a great run game. Okay, was that based on James Conner? Was the offensive line getting long in the tooth? Like, what are all those narratives? You remember Le'Veon Bell doesn't show up. Antonio Brown becomes a nutcase. There's a lot of things with that. Ben doesn't have the familiarity with some of these guys just yet. And when you lose them before the game or in game, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and you got to throw to Ray McLeod and Cody White. This is the same thing like when you had Kobe Hamilton and stuff. This team can't catch a break sometimes when it comes to injuries. Is it all injuries? You can make up for a guy here or there. You're not going to make up for a perennial two-time Defensive Player of the Year candidate in TJ Watt, who has led this team in sacks in each of the last 2-3 years. You are not going to be able to replace that. How many strip sacks? Half the games he's played in, he's had a strip sack in his career. It's just phenomenal and just almost unbelievable. And then you're going to think that, well, Derek Tuszka, who comes from North Dakota State, they're a good FCS program. You know, I stand for the FCS schools, right? I even had this guy in my mock draft the year before. I kind of forgot about him, to be completely honest, when the Taco Charlton news. I knew they had to elevate someone. I'm like, oh, they're elevating Tuszka. Well, he's been there since September 1st, so he's been around for about 3 weeks. He was a practice squad player, elevated, brought up just like Cody White was, because they needed a body. He plays more snaps than Jameer Jones. Did Jameer Jones just get banged up, or was Jameer Jones out of position? Or was Mike Tomlin and company just trying to get some type of pressure on Joe Burrow? You can't lose Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt and then still be down Tyson Alualu and Stephon Tuitt. You're leaving Cam Hayward out there to be double and triple team. The other guys aren't experienced or just maybe not talented enough to do it on their own. The Steelers weren't sending any blitzes. Mike Tomlin was asked about this. He said something about not wanting to have more negatives. And I guess what that really means is you send somebody and leave someone else open. Maybe there's just too much inexperience and too many moving parts and too many holes right now for this all to function the way we would like. Cam Sutton playing way too much in the slot. You end up seeing James Pierre exposed on the one Jamar Chase touchdown. I might get through actually a little bit more of the actual play-by-play and possessions here, because there's still some stuff that stands out to me. Matt Canada offense, are we asking too much of Ben to move around and stuff? You're not going to go grab Cam Newton. You're not going to trade for Deshaun Watson, who could be suspended indefinitely from the league. We don't know what the law stuff is. And you're not giving up like 3 first-round draft picks to go get Deshaun Watson anyways and inherit. This is everybody's problem. Ben has handcuffed this team with his contract. What do you think Deshaun Watson's going to do? Did you see the contract he signed? It's absolutely crazy. Deshaun Watson as a player, leave all the other stuff out of it, the legal and the off-field stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't want Deshaun Watson to be their quarterback? But the other stuff might keep him from being able to be on the field. You got to consider that, and you're going to pay for the right to not have a player play. Then you're just really going to talk about handcuffing the franchise. Yikes. We've seen Ben do this, though. I brought up Todd Haley, right? People bring up Mike Munchak. Really, it's Todd Haley's offense, I think, that produced the Antonio Browns, the Martavis Bryants, the Big Ben, big numbers, Le'Veon Bell, helped that offensive line too. Hand in hand with Mike Munchak, maybe you lost 2 good coaches. Again, I'm not just going to crap all over Munchak, but there's been a few other things that have happened here. I think some of these guys got to unlearn the Randy Fichtner system. Randy Fichtner unable to change things up. The Steelers at least sustained some sort of semblance of possession and drives and whatnot still through 3 games. It's still, Matt Canada has got them doing more than they used to, as dumb as that sounds. Now, the first quarters have been slow. The first quarters have sucked. They haven't scored in the first quarter going back to November against the Cincinnati Bengals last year. That has been like a Big Ben thing for as long as I can remember. You go back to even 2017, the old gunslinger doesn't have it. In 2018, he throws like a pick. Shelby Harris, Denver Broncos. That was the thing that got the whole ball rolling with Antonio Brown quitting on the team, if you remember. He fed Antonio Brown like crazy against the Saints a week later, and then all of a sudden it was like, I'm going to throw my temper tantrums and stuff. I'm not going to say it's all like Ben with this personality, but the team is frustrated, and they're making mistakes, and people have bad games. Does that mean you need to get rid of Ben? I'm not going to say you got to get rid of Ben. I still think Ben is the best option, but Ben himself has not been Ben. But we've seen that happen before, and we've seen it iron itself out. Is that because he's been a little banged up? Is that because he's getting long in the tooth? He's getting up there in age, and Father Time is undefeated? I guess we won't know the definite answer of that yet for weeks and months to come. Will Mike Tomlin have the guts to pull him and try and maybe see what they have with the younger quarterbacks before just going and drafting somebody? Because drafting somebody isn't necessarily the answer either. What? All the guys that have been drafted that are playing this year, the Zach Wilsons, the Mac Jones. Mac Jones has like the one victory, and he has it, over Zach Wilson? 10 games, one victory by these rookie quarterbacks. Justin Fields obliterated by the Cleveland Browns. Just looks absolutely miserable. Everybody was making fun of the Falcons for not drafting him. I don't know. It's only one game. But it's still early, and especially with these young men's careers. But just tossing them out there isn't necessarily the answer either, folks. I don't know what you do. If the Bengals line, Burrow was the second most sacked guy heading into this game. 10 sacks, I said that. And they couldn't get after him, not even once. They break this streak. They weren't sending blitzes because they felt everything else was weak. They have Cam Sutton playing in the slot, which has James Pierre, an undrafted guy, playing on the outside against Jamar Chase, who he was dropping balls. He had played. He was an opt-out from college, right? He wasn't playing. He just had to warm right up. He was one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets. Still is, twice in that game. We know there was a call that led to that. Officiating. Lots of holding calls. Some of them merited. I'm not complaining about that. That didn't cost the Steelers the game, but I do think it cost some momentum. Cost a little bit of... what will you say? I guess momentum is probably the right word. It gets into your head mentally, as do a lot of other things, and you end up being self-defeating. A bad punt by Presley Harvin, a missed field goal by Chris Boswell. They're still positives. I think not having Ben throw the ball as much as he did, 58 times, he threw it 19 times to Najee Harris. Holy crap. He caught 14 balls, which led the team 102 yards. Ben, without his other targets, obviously he's checking down there. You get Pratt Freiermuth a little more involved. He scores his first NFL touchdown. I thought that was great. Juju left the game early. Ray McLeod almost fumbled, almost disastrous right there too, but Ben goes back to him, finds him, 24-yard long connection. These balls are getting down the field some. 29-yarder to Claypool. Not all of them are connecting. Not all of them are on target. You throw the ball downfield, it's a higher risk, higher reward situation. They're not always accurate. Wind was whipping around yesterday, too. I think I'll say that as far as maybe the Boswell missed kick, 42 yards. He's usually clutch and automatic, and that just really puts the nail in the coffin. And then I'm still unhappy that they do all this on a drive. It has some nice drives, and it ends without getting in the end zone. It's disappointing. It really is. I can't take that away from anybody. It bothers me, too. But again, I don't expect them to go and do this game after game after game. Green Bay, they got to go and play the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that's very hard to get the ball from. You're not going to make him turn it over. He's smart with his decisions usually, except for week 1. We all made fun of him, got our yucks in. Now they seem to have that cleaned up, right? So I'll have more of a preview on that later, but I just don't think that's an automatic W for the Packers either. They just had a very hard-fought game. Steelers, what happens if they get Watt and Highsmith back? It was the right decision. That's another thing. Mike Tomlin's thinking maybe we could still get the better of the Cincinnati Bengals with the guys that we have and not risk losing Watt or Highsmith or whoever else, Deontay Johnson, for multiple games. You got to take that. You got to take that gamble as the head coach with a win or a loss here. A loss here is one loss. You got to overcome one loss. You're not going to be able to overcome 3 if you're missing your guys like that. So you got to knock on wood and hope that that's the best. But, man, that pass rush, the coverage sack thing too, Ben was saying that on the opposite side with the Cincinnati Bengals. Their secondary, I said, their secondary was pretty strong. I thought they could go after Eli Apple, and they did. And they didn't always get it. Ben missed one. Oh, James Washington could have walked it right in. It just needed like an extra, maybe a half step. And it's right there, man. And those are the things. Did Ben throw it too far or whatever? Ben's playing to the outside, throwing more towards the sidelines on some of these, so maybe the defenders can't get at the ball. He might be in his own head. I don't know what he saw. What was the linebacker's name? I always want to call him Logan Thomas, which is that's the wrong guy. Logan Wilson. So he gets the picks in this game, and it's just like, what were you looking at? I don't understand it. Ben got hit a few times in this game, obviously too. 7 times. Once again, Steelers give up 4 sacks. He's been sacked more this year. It's still growing pains. This line hasn't been together more. Chooks Okorafor commits a false start penalty. I'm trying to figure out what the heck's going on. He comes off the field, and then all of a sudden he's in concussion protocol. He hurt himself. I don't even want to joke about that, hurting himself on the penalty. But these are the weird things that are going on, too. I don't think his play has been up to snuff. I was watching Joe Haeg. Joe Haeg does get beat on one play, but I thought Joe Haeg was okay coming in, cold. What was that, third, fourth quarter by this point? Anyway, it was tough to watch. It really was. I mean, you thought everything was going to go kind of the Steelers' way. Minka makes a heck of a play on the ball, pops up. He nearly has it himself, and pops over to Terrell Edmonds, gets a pick, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, Terrell Edmonds. Terrell Edmonds has one of the only 2 tackles for loss in this game. It just tells you how rough it was of a go for this Steelers defense. They're playing Arthur Maulet out there as well. And I mentioned, I got to say, his name is very similar to mine. I should be able to say this, right? Tuszka, the guy from North Dakota State, his first meaningful snaps. I think he had like 20 snaps with the Denver Broncos last year. Jameer Jones, I think, had, I don't know, what did Jameer have? Like 5 if he's had any at all. And that was all the previous week. Jones is out there for 20 plays, 43% of the game. Tuszka's out there 57% of the game. James Pierre's out there for half of the game. It's rough. You're replacing Alualu with Wormley. Wormley's also replacing Tuitt. You're trying to get something going without sending a blitz, further handicapping the other things you're doing to cover your other handicaps. I mean, Maulet made that one nice play, and then things break down. They find Jamar Chase on that one on the second touchdown because there's just an obscene amount of time. They got to be able to get after quarterback. If you can't get after Aaron Rodgers, that'll be a problem. Obviously, he has a better weapon in Devontae Adams. He has Aaron Jones. I think he could shut Aaron Jones down. The Steelers are taking away a weapon. Mixon didn't just absolutely kill him, but Jamar Chase got behind the defense again. So we're going to see that. I saw Sutton kind of slide in and play some safety as well in this game. They're using him all over the place. They're asking him to be everything. And it's pretty quiet. It was pretty quiet on Joe Hayden's side for the most part. So, there's still some positives defensively. I think if they can get the pass rush going, Devin Bush, Joe Schobert there as your inside linebackers, you're going to get to see the things that you saw against Buffalo. And that second half adjustments in the offense. Yeah. Can they get the run game going? If they don't commit penalties, they can. How many long runs ended up just disappearing because somebody held somebody and committed a penalty? Very self-defeating type stuff. This happened before. We've seen this in years before where Tomlin brings in like some local high school referees to help throw flags during practice and get these guys disciplined. I don't know that it was necessarily at that point. I thought they did well with the penalty stuff. But you also got to consider who's out there. It's Clete Blakeman. I had to know that. I didn't mention that in the pregame. It's like when he gets an AFC North game, and he always does, it's usually the Bengals or the Ravens games with the Steelers. They're just the ugly games. They had that Bears game many years ago, if you remember, with the fumble in the end zone, the end of the half, and it's just everything with him just takes forever. But again, I don't want to complain too much about officiating. You had a roughing the passer call that should have been called. You had one that ended up being a makeup call because of the one with Melvin Ingram going after Joe Burrow. I think that was probably the biggest self-defeating penalty that the Steelers ended up having in this game. Overall. So let's take a look at some of these plays. Let's see what else I may have missed on the horizon. But then again, there was a Derek Watt sighting. And I think that ended up working out okay with the exception of the little pitch pass thing. And Ben falls over. I'm wondering what the heck's going on in here. There's just something that they're not comfortable. Maybe they'll play better on the road. We'll end up seeing. So everyone else, they want to stick to some of this stuff too with how they've lost the four straight AFC North games because you had the Bengals game that was in Cincinnati. That was an absolute cluster. And you're asking Ben to move around and do a lot of the same things. I think you almost got to get down to just basics. I think there might be just a little bit too much of a learning curve for some of these guys, especially the rookies. But it was very refreshing, though, to see the top 2 picks, Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, do what they do. And that's why they picked them where they picked them. Jury isn't out on Kendrick Green. My jury isn't out on Dan Moore. I don't think there's anybody in free agency you're going to bring in. It's going to patch it up and make it any better. BJ Finney and some of these Joe Hagues and guys that are on the bench, I don't think you're going to make it any better. Did I expect this line to be all pro? No. I think if they're just average, they could still get the job done. Just there's got to be some things done so maybe it doesn't become as predictable and maybe Ben isn't throwing the ball 58 times because I think the other thing too I got to put out there. I liked Najee in this pass game. I did. Not the volume. but it was nice. I said, you get him this many touches, you see what he produces, you see the dynamic he brings. I think this is going to start evolving. It's a lot like when we used to say Lev Bell was the second best receiver on the Steelers. Now you need that other number one receiver. You need a guy that's like Chase Claypool could be that deep threat. I don't want to throw the ball anywhere near Eric Ebron anymore. They're just not even going to cover him. I mean, I don't trust him. I just don't trust him. And I also saw a very lackluster effort of him blocking. I'm trying to figure out why the Steelers are playing Zach Gentry so much. Usually the guy, the third tight end, isn't even active on game days. And he's out there and he's like you kind of know, hey, he's out here to block. So you don't even really got to worry about him squeaking out. They never throw the ball at him. It's kind of like the way Matt Spaeth was. There's a role for guys like that in the NFL, but I think when you make it obvious, it's a little less obvious when they're using Derek Watt in like an H-back type deal situation. He isn't always in the backfield. He isn't always like an offset kind of eye. Pro form out of the shotgun, you had Ben flanked by both Watt and Harris on a play. They had some things there that have the makings of being better. I'm not ready to just stick a fork in it. I don't feel it's helpless. I don't feel it's as helpless as the Randy Fichtner stuff. I'm not going to say, hey, like Alejandro Villanueva last year, this guy's washed. They're going to beat him like a drum, whatever be the case. DeCastro being hurt, playing hurt, things of those nature. The young guys, I could still see maybe a higher ceiling for. The floor, not looking absolutely great, but again, it's not always, I don't think it's always their fault. I think Ben's missing some primary reads. He's looking around the field. He's forcing the ball in some cases, or he's not pulling the trigger in some other cases. Get the cobwebs out there. If he's playing a little sharper, it's going to help that line too. Vice versa, the line starts to bring their game up a level. That's going to help Ben. I think they got to go hand in hand here. I think you're seeing what some of the moving parts here. Najee still has to become a pro. He's got to get there. He's going to get there, I think. But 14 for 40, it's kind of like, again, Mixon had 18 for 90. And I'm not going to say the Bengals had a better offensive line by any means. Everybody in the AFC North, not named the Cleveland Browns, had some offensive line worries and concerns heading into this offseason and doing some reshaping and rebuilding and things of that nature. So heading into this game, God, I could just skip the entire first quarter, I think. I mean, the Steelers punt, and then give the ball back. They get it off an interception and give it right back. Very short field, too, for the Bengals there. They get it at the Steelers 42, 6 plays, 47 yards, ends in that for the first score of the game. So let me see. I'm still trying to pull it up here. All right, here we go. First quarter, you've got 4 yards from Najee Harris, right? Then 1 yard. Then it's a core 4 illegal formation. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You're into 2nd and 11. Then you're into 3rd and 6. He goes deep for James Washington, doesn't connect. I think some of it, sometimes the play calling, I don't think it's necessarily as bad as, I think it's more the execution on some of these. We do have one that's very questionable, though, and you know what I'm going to get to here a little bit later. You had a bunch of holding in this game. You had it on Cincinnati at first, at least. I think it was Melvin Ingram that was getting held early on. There's only so much you could ask of the guy when he's the only one that's getting in the backfield. Kendrick Green, first thing. Najee Harris gets 10 yards, and Kendrick Green gets tagged with holding. So now you're back to 1st and 20, and it's a short right pass to Juju for only 3 yards. I watched the Bengals and the Raiders attack the Steelers defense the last 2 games, Derek Carr and Joe Burrow, and it seems like they have like a little bit more time, especially when TJ wasn't on the field and Highsmith wasn't on the field and those things. And they're getting bigger chunks, 6, 7, 8 yards. That's the thing I'm not seeing the Steelers do. I don't know if it's route running. I don't know what it is. It's not. I don't know what it is. Too many guys in the box. Like, what's not working? You're not getting everybody to play a little deeper and back off. Again, I think that's a coaching thing. It's fixable. But 3 yards on 1st and 20, it's not doing it. I mean, if you run the ball, 3 yards ain't a whole lot either, but we're talking 1st and 20, not 1st and 10, and then it's 2nd and 7. I'll take 2nd and 7. They can't do 2nd and 17 here. Now, Najee gets 12 yards off of this, and then there's an offensive pass interference from Chase Claypool. He gets out in front, and he pushes the guy like before the ball's even released, and you're just, sorry, I banged my head off the mic because I'm banging my head watching this stuff. It was driving me crazy. So now it's 2nd and 23. You got an incomplete pass and then another little short pass that goes nowhere, and they're pissed. And that's the proper word to say here. Burrow goes for Tyler Boyd. That's the interception there. And then the Steelers, of course, cough it right back up about 4 plays later. Again, you get to 3rd and 8. You have an incomplete to Ebron. You had Harris run for 2 yards. Trey Turner now with the false start. 3rd and 13, and Ben goes after Claypool, and Logan Wilson picks it off. Give the ball right back. You're in these passing situations. You're digging yourself a hole twice here. This leads to Cincinnati's play touchdown drive. Like I said, 6 plays, 42 yards, ends with a 17-yarder to Tyler Boyd. Oh, man. Ben Roethlisberger then gets sacked right out the gate, and then it's 2nd and 15. Do you see what I mean? They're shooting themselves in the foot, and it's all over the place. Penalties, not just the offensive lineman. Ben throwing an interception. Ben getting sacked, maybe holding the ball too long, not throwing it out of bounds, trying to make something happen. Shifting, moving, whatever. It's just driving me crazy. He goes deep again for James Washington. You actually get a pass interference. They get bailed out here on this play. Najee Harris gets stuffed, loses 3 yards. Let's try and figure out what happened there. Somebody on the backside, on the weak side of that play, I believe just came in completely unblocked. The rest of it, I think some of it, again, execution. It's not coming together fast enough. I think it's going to get there. You see some holes, they close quick. We're going to get there eventually. Ben would have had this long completion. Clayton Blakeman and their crew blow it completely dead. It was Mike Hilton trying to come in off a blitz, neutral zone infraction. Only 5 yards. It sets him back up at 3rd down instead of getting the big chunk play. But 3rd and 2, Ben scrambles, looking about as slow as, rest in peace, Grandma. My deceased grandmother, about moving just as fast. Maybe, I don't know, man. It's just, that's scary. I don't want to see him in open space and then get cracked. And it's not scary because I don't want to, not to disparage like Mason Rudolph coming into the game, but that's not what you want to do. I think you still, like I said, you still want your best guy available there. It's not that I'm not confident in him, but you really want Ben to go out in that fashion? No, nobody does. I think we're still rooting for him to be the guy that he's always been. Short left to Claypool. It's Najee Harris 1 yard run. Claypool for 3. That's the thing. A lot of the offensive principles I'm seeing with Matt Canada here, and not to belabor this stuff, this is what I'm noticing. Get the ball into Claypool's hands. He's a grown-ass man. He's huge. Juju Smith-Schuster, also physical. Deontay Johnson makes people miss. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to set up Najee Harris, same thing. You get these guys in the pass game, and you got to beat the first guy. And that's what I'm seeing. So a lot of these short passes is all about making the first guy miss, and they're not always making the first guy miss. And many times they're ended up, even if the first guy is right there, they end up with help within a second. They're not being able to break some of it. Sometimes they do. Presley Harvin here, 27-yard punt, not the best. Like I said, might have been a factor of the wind. Defense is sleeping. They give up 27 to Mixon. Then it's a 1 yard run, a tackle for a loss. That was Terrell Edmonds involved in there with Cam Hayward. Joe Burrow ends up scrambling a little bit for 3 yards, but they put the lid on that. But it wasn't much because Cincinnati already had the ball at like the 50-yard line, so the Steelers started at their 14. The starting field position, just garbage. And this affects your play calling too. So what are you going to do? You're going to run on first down and run behind one of your guards. Why not? That's the only thing that they ended up doing here. That's the thing I think I had the biggest problem with. No jet sweep in this game. At least maybe I missed it. Maybe I was falling asleep because there were, it was just not a fun game. You get Freiermuth involved in here. So Najee Harris, this is a drive where it's like, let's start counting the yards. Harris and Freiermuth pile up here. You got Najee for 7, Freiermuth for 3. Ben gets sacked on first down, so they lose 5 yards. So now you're back in the 2nd and 15. Pick up 16 with Juju. Najee picks up 3, but now Kevin Dotson holding. Hey, everybody's got to get their flag for the day, right? Every single one of these guys on the line. So that's 1st and 17. But Najee right up the middle, 20 yards. They go right back at it. Boom. Okay, all right, we're doing something here. So what? Najee's got 23 here. Claypool picks up 12. Najee, no gain. Juju for 6, Najee for 6. So now you're about almost at 30 yards with just Najee. A little, that was on 3rd and 4, by the way. So that little short pass, that works out. Derek Watt, the little pitch, 3 yards, and try to catch him off guard. I didn't have the biggest problem with that. My biggest problem is like if this ball is the tip drill and then or he fumbles or something of that nature, that's what terrifies me because it's like, okay, you're trusting. You got trust in this guy. Don't lose my trust. Okay, 2-minute warning. Najee Harris, 2 yards. Najee Harris, 18 yards. We're up to about 50 yards or so from scrimmage here with Najee here. Timeout, Steelers, the short pass, Pat Freiermuth, 4 yards, first NFL touchdown. You got both of the first and second round pick working here. I know it was like maybe pulling teeth because it was 15 plays for 86 yards, 8 minutes and 32 seconds time. 13, almost 14 minutes real time elapsed versus the game clock. That was unbelievable. But overall, like the Steelers didn't have a problem with possessing the ball as much as you might think in this game. They had 21 first downs to the Bengals 12. Now, 16 of those were by passing. Some of that was a little bit of garbage time. The Bengals were only 3 of 9, 33% on third down, where the Steelers were 9 of 19, 47%. Of course, the Steelers missed, swing and a miss twice on fourth down. 342 yards to the Bengals 268. I think some of that was the short field factor. Some of the penalty yards, we're about to come up to that situation in the game here in a second. But the time of possession, the Steelers just dominated 35-22 to 24-38, and it makes you wonder, they can only get 10 points on the board. That's the depressing part of all this. The other part of this, too, is the roughing the passer. 2nd and 3, Cincinnati 32-yard line here, and that gets moved up to now the 47. There's a 19-yard pass. And then the 34-yard pass to Jamar Chase, and they go up 14-7 after having it just knotted. I mean, you could have got them in a third down situation. Even possibly, I wish Ingram could have got to that because that would have been one of the only plays where somebody was, pressuring Joe Burrow. And the Steelers don't do a whole heck of a lot here. It's a 3-and-out trying to rush through and do something. Incomplete to Claypool, incomplete to Najee. Najee had a little bit of butterfingers there, but not so much. I still see some I see more good than bad. You know what I mean? Some of this is the balls that Ben's throwing or setting his way as well. Presley Harvin, he's still... I think he still has a little bit of jitters here or there, but there was like one punt that was like 57 yards. And it's like, yeah, you still need this guy. Somebody was trying to then say Jordan Berry. Well, Jordan Berry has the same type of shanks and stuff too. They're comparing Jordan Berry in Minnesota now. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's the guy you didn't want for the last 3 years. Cannot make anybody happy anyways. You got to go into battle with what you got. And what you got here is that the Bengals not only scored right before halftime, but they get the ball right back by virtue of the coin toss and deferring at the beginning of the game. And they're able to chunk together 10 plays, 55 yards, and kill about half, well, not quite half of the clock, but about 6 minutes and 13 seconds here of the third quarter to open up. And they get down to the Steelers 25, and the defense is able to at least... they're aided a little bit by some penalties here. I wouldn't say they necessarily get off of the field, but they only relinquish a field goal. Okay, it's a 2-score game at 17-7, but not without reach. You got the Steelers getting the ball back, again, at the 25-yard line. I mean, it's like you're starting out there or in a worse, deeper spot in most of these cases. And it is intercepted again after 3 plays. Short left to Najee, incomplete to Najee, and then intended in the middle for Juju, which was, I don't know what Ben was looking at. It almost looked like he had money on the Bengals or on the line, and he was giving the ball away intentionally. It looked really bad. I mean, it was really bad. And just this was the nail in the coffin for the Steelers here pretty much because the Bengals, they get the ball at the Steelers 19. You're asking a tall task of this defense where Joe Burrow ends up connecting on 1st and 9 from the 9. Only 3 plays into this drive for Jamar Chase and his second touchdown of the game. 3 plays, 19 yards, all premeditated here by the Big Ben interception. Shoot yourself in the foot, giving away points off the turnovers. Can't win that turnover battle, and you can't end up pressuring or getting sacks, negative plays against the other team. It piles up. Anybody's going to be able to beat you on any Sunday when those statistics, no matter the rest of the stuff, time of possession, this and that. That's why I still feel okay. I'm going to say it's great. No, I'm not going to say it's great because you get this next play. It gets down to the Cincinnati 24. You got Freiermuth for 15. You go right back to him. Harris only gets a yard, and then there's a pass to Harris for 21. there's a roughing the passer. I felt like this was the makeup call from the first half. And maybe if that call doesn't happen, maybe this game's a little bit tighter. Maybe Ben doesn't throw an interception. This game's a little bit tighter. But they still don't get in the end zone here. They're at the 24. He goes to try and take some shots. Harris, Freiermuth, a very rare ball that's in his catch radius that he doesn't hold on to. Drives me, I don't know. It was just... and then to Chase Claypool. I actually thought that maybe this one, no, that was the Claypool one. I thought there was one he went to Ebron. I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't know what you're seeing. I don't know that the trust is there, but Chris Boswell, usually Mr. Automatic, misses the 42-yard field goal. Ball ends up going back to the Cincinnati Bengals, and their punter is able to pooch this one 54 yards and pin the Steelers after Justin Lane having a holding penalty. Now, this, I think, was all the way down at the 8-yard line. You go half the distance to the goal, and they're backed up on their own 4. You're just lucky that more disaster didn't happen from this. Najee gets like 2 yards, a core 4 with the false start, and he ends up coming out of the game. Ben finds Chase Claypool positive 16 yards down field. James Washington gets involved in the game finally. He had a few targets, not many. I don't know, Ben wasn't looking his way enough. It was very strange, but this is where it becomes just absolutely just pass happy. You had a little bit of the no huddle or muddle huddle stuff that seemed to be working pretty well too. People were like, oh, well, Ben's just calling his own plays and he's drawing in the dirt. Maybe he is, and maybe not, some of that's influenced by Matt Canada, or he's in the headset, but there's just a few things there. Ray McLeod, 24 yards. Harris, then a no-gainer. And then Cody White, 6 yards. Cody White shows up in the stat sheet. 2 catches, only 15 yards. But, hey, this was important here because now you're without Juju and you're without Deontay. For whatever reason, James Washington isn't getting it done. You got to take Claypool off the field to get a breather on these long completions. And he's just he got dinged at one point too. So it's, you got Raymond McLeod again fumbled. At least he recovered it. Roethlisberger, incomplete pass. He goes out to Chase Claypool, but a very obvious pass interference where Eli Apple was holding or pushed off and whatever. It was a combo of things. It was very obvious. Let's put it that way. Incomplete to Freiermuth. James Washington, now he finally finds him again. Najee Harris. And there's like this short pass to Pat Freiermuth. And you're on, you lose a yard. You're down at the first and goal, the Cincinnati 3, and they backed themselves up so badly here. This was the Claypool one too, where again, he's out in front before he needs to be trying to block. A little overzealous. Twice in the same game, if my recall is correct on this. And now you're backing him out to the 13 from the 3. Then Ben gets sacked and loses another 3 yards. And now they're back to the 16. And then Dan Moore, ding, 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 another lineman. Was there any one of the offensive linemen that did not get penalized? Aside from Joe Higg coming in later in the game, of the 5 starters that started this game, I think they all got tagged with 1. Dotson did too. I think Green did. Turner, all of them. Okorafor. Short pass to Najee. Gets in. Or doesn't get in here. They settle from the 8-yard line. So they're out to 16. There's another short pass. You're not going towards the end zone. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here. You're not trying to score a touchdown with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you're down 24-7. Like, it bothered me. It just bothered me. I'm not sure what wasn't materializing, what they're going to see on film, what they're going to be able to improve here. So Boswell is a chip shot now, 26 yards. Oh, yay. I mean, I get it, Mike Tomlin. Everybody booed. They wanted him to go for it on 4th down. They're already down this many points. I'm like, what do you got to lose? You felt it just, to me, after Boswell missed that field goal and after you did this, you've already, kind of committed to your fate for this game and said that we're beaten. And that sucks. And I think that was kind of demoralizing all the way around, all 3 phases of football there. 26-yarder, yeah, they got some points on the board. You don't want to not leave points on the board. You're within 14, but there's 8 minutes left. I mean, you could always operate a shorter part of the field and have Boswell kick a longer field goal to get those 3 points in a different situation. This was my problem with the Raiders play and not going on 4th and 1 last week, is the clock is now your enemy. The score and the game situation with the clock, you got to put up some points when you're running 18 plays, 88 yards, 9 minutes and 3 seconds. They got the drives here, but it feels like it's pulling teeth. Like it's just like a little here and a little here. And then all of a sudden it's chunk. And then they're biting off a little here and a little here. You're enjoying the steak and then you're swallowing it. Not enough sizzle there for that steak, in my opinion. So I don't think it's all lost. Believe it or not, the Steelers defense, they actually get the ball back here. You had a false start penalty. No renegade played at Heinz Field. Wasn't worthy of being played on Sunday. The Steelers get the ball back. This is the aforementioned, what the heck? I don't know, was Najee Harris trying to pull up Jerome Bettis and throw the ball here? It's 4th and 10, the Cincinnati 11. Ben he's gotten sacked. They were down at the 11. They get it back going to James Washington. He goes for Eric Ebron, covered by Von Bell. I'm not sure if Ebron, it seems like the harder the catch that's possible for him to catch, he will catch it. It's the complete opposite of what it should be. And then he drops the easy ones. I just at that point, I'm just like, why are you throwing at him of all people? I'm mad. I'm with you. The pitchforks and torches are all out. But I'll still be excited to watch Sunday against the Packers and see what they do. Maybe it'll be just as miserable, but Najee loses the yard on this. Mike Tomlin says they fired all their bullets. I think it was just BS. I think they may have had a gadget play drawn up, and it was just snuffed out entirely. It's just the way it felt. It felt like he was getting ready to cock and he just immediately was like, nope, you can't do it. You know what I mean? And he's not trying to force a mistake, but it's 4th down and you lose the ball and you turn over on downs and you get no points out of that right there. I also felt that this drive here at the end of the game too, there wasn't enough sense of urgency. And I get that you're down still 14 points, but you get the ball, you receive it, 6:25. And I'm saying to myself, they could do this in about 2.5 minutes and drive the field, leave about 4, maybe even 3.5 on the clock. At this point, the Steelers had, I think, all 3 of their timeouts and a 2-minute warning to operate with. You get it within 7, you may still have a prayer of knotting this game up. You're either going to use your timeouts to save some clock, force Cincinnati to run the ball, choose some clock, hopefully force a 3 and out in conjunction with the 2-minute warning. And then you may still have one of those timeouts at least in your back pocket for Ben and company to come on the field and maybe guys had game-winning drives. He's definitely experienced. I don't know. That kind of bothered me. Of course, by the time they do get the ball back here, the damage is already done. Following the 2-minute warning, you're still down because you didn't score on the 4th down, and it's just whatever. Short left to Najee, 8 yards, incomplete. Game over. Joe Burrow kneels twice. That's their victory formation. Fans are headed to the stands. It's ugly. Yeah, it was ugly. But if you kind of see some of the things I've highlighted here, if you could pick up and improve in a few of these areas where they fell down everywhere. It just wasn't. It's not Steelers football. And certainly, I hope the team does get healthy because without having your players, this happens around the league. I know everybody has to deal with injuries, but that's like my same argument with the offensive line. How many offensive lines have 5 All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowlers? If you can get one of these young men to step up their game and be excellent, you can make up for maybe some of the other deficiencies where they're not. And you don't have as many weaknesses. I don't know that they have 5 weaknesses out there. They just got to clean it up. The penalties, part of it too. We saw those big plays I highlighted here that you didn't get back to. So I don't want to see another quarterback in Pittsburgh, unless it's one of the 2 guys that are already on the bench. You want to go with Mason, you want to go with Dwayne Haskins. That's fine with me. They're the ones that were in camp. We've already seen this other story. You bring in Cam Newton. You see how it with Michael Vick. Neither of these guys are the most accurate quarterbacks. It's not going to be an instant fix. They're going to get 3 days of practice and then stink out the joint. This is what happens when all of these quarterbacks are picked up on short notice, thrown out there, and have to start. I think the Steelers are more comfortable with the guys that they've got on their roster, including Ben Roethlisberger. We'll see what ends up happening. I don't know. Again, a byproduct of Ben being hurt. You can't keep him fresh when you have him throwing 50-some times a game, too. But again, you're asking him to throw 50-some times because you dug yourself a hole and now you have to scrap everything else, throw the ball and work against the clock. It doesn't help anything either. Again, pass rush, Ben's got to clean it up a little more. We'll see what ends up happening. If you want to say I'm full of it, that's fine with me too. There's some people who like to take their frustration out on my opinions. Again, I'm just trying to talk you off the ledge, off the proverbial ledge. So if you happen to bet on this game with my bookie by any chance, if you went with the under, you would have been correct. And I was just trying to figure out, what was it, 43 points originally? So if you haven't gotten out there with MyBookie, the winning season again, it cranked up. It was a $50,000 survivor contest. If you picked the Steelers in any of the last 2 weeks, you're probably already out. But you get that whether you're a new and existing customer, as long as you make a deposit with MyBookie. It's a $50,000 survivor contest, and it's absolutely free to play. All you have to do is pick one winner a week to keep your streak alive and have a shot at the grand prize. Start off strong with I don't know, who's playing on Thursday night now. That's who I was just looking for. So you've got the Jaguars and the Bengals. How are you feeling about that at this point? You know what I mean? Jaguars are 0-3. Maybe you got one for your survivor pool. I know, it kind of throw up in your mouth a little bit as to having to pick the Bengals, but hey, that's something you could go with. And I don't know. We're going to have to see what the line ends up being coming up this week. MyBookie.ag, Steelers and Green Bay. Green Bay is going to be favored because they're at home. We'll see by how many points. Either way, it's simple to play and win. Even if you don't have a ton of betting experience, go to MyBookie. That's what I choose. Some of you might not even have a choice. You know, you might not have other choices depending geographically where you are. That's not going to be a problem with MyBookie. So head on over there, get on in on the competition, use the promo code SteelCity, receive double your first deposit, and get instant access to that survivor pool. Again, that's the promo code SteelCity, all one word, and you can instantly double your first deposit. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. My final closing thoughts is Mike Tomlin said most of us didn't coach well enough. I think he's alluding to some of his coordinators as well. I think he may be talking even about Matt Canada, but is also Keith Butler. He's not gonna make the same excuses I do when it comes to injuries. He expects his players to play up to a certain level. Obviously, that didn't happen. But man, there's people that are already, this isn't going to get any better as long as Mike Tomlin's the coach. I've already showed you, man. It's Andy Reid and Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. They're all staring down the barrel of the same 1-2. And 1-3 is a little more to climb out of, but when you look back at the Steelers' records over the last several years, you saw what Mike Tomlin did in 2019, even with all of those injuries. I understand 2020, they ripped off 11 straight victories, and nobody was expecting them to do that. Did they play a bunch of weak teams? You could say that. You can make that argument. That's the same argument I'm making around the AFC North, too. You look at some of the opponents. You look at, Cleveland destroyed Justin Fields. They had the opportunity. They got to play him. And maybe the Steelers don't get that same opportunity when they play the Bears later, or maybe Fields learns from his mistakes and isn't starting his first game. You can only play the schedule that's put out in front of you. So I'm not trying to, detract from anyone else. I'm just trying to say there's been some slow starts. The Steelers started out 1-4 that year. I understand they missed out by the playoffs by one game, but now there's an extra playoff spot. All these years they would have made the playoffs except for one under Mike Tomlin. Had there been 7 spots always available. 2018, they tied the Cleveland Browns. They lost. Then they won. They were 1-1-1. They were 1-2-1 before ripping off 6 straight wins that season. Yeah, they had the late season collapse in 2018. 2017 was one of their better fares there. They start out 2-1, 3-1, then 3-2, and then rip off a bunch of wins and finish 13-3. In 2016, also, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. Then they lose 4 in a row, and they end up at 4-5. So you have these spots in the season, and for whatever variety of reasons that end up occurring, no team is perfect, and you're going to have valleys, and you're going to have mountains in the mountain peaks and valleys, right? So right now, I think there is a valley for the Steelers. Do they stay down in there and climb out of it? Again, I tend to be the guy that's the glass half full versus the glass half empty. Let's take a wait-and-see approach and see what ends up happening here in the coming weeks. Green Bay Packers first on deck on the road, and then the Steelers will have 2 games at home. Denver Broncos 3-0. That could be interesting. We'll see what kind of byproduct that is as well. I don't think anyone was picking them to be in that position, but also look at the teams that they played. You look at the record, they're 3-0. That's fantastic. I would like to be 3-0 too. That's good. It's the Giants, Jaguars, and Jets. If these teams even won a game, the Giants, Jaguars, and Jets. The 3 of the worst teams in the NFL, and people are trying to lop the Steelers in with them. come on. There's also obviously the great value brand teams, and those are 3 of them. So there's still some hope there. And then the eternally slow starting Seahawks. They win against the Colts. They lost in overtime to the Titans, and they lose to the Vikings. And I don't necessarily know that those are some of the most competitive teams right now as well. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in the coming weeks. But again, I'm talking you off the cliff. You get to the bye week, and I think things will get a little more interesting with some AFC North ball. The kitchen will get a little hotter, as Mike Tomlin tends to say. So, folks, I'm going to leave it at that. Send me your comments. Flame me, if you will. I'm just not throwing everyone under the bus. I'm not, what was it? Dave Damachek ended up retweeting something this morning from Ron Cook. And he was like, yep, this will be the last Steelers season ever. And that's the way I feel with the way some of the people out there react and treat a football game. This game is for your entertainment. Don't send death threats to the team. Don't be stupid. Don't do anything like that. So enjoy. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this show. We appreciate your support. I'm going to get Brian back on here at some point. We will get back together. He was out, again, being the mountain man. So I was too busy with the travel from this game, and we didn't connect. So my buddy will be back. 2%ers, 1%ers now. Thank you for joining us. As always, my name is Joe Kuzma, and each and every time we close out this show and encourage all the fine folks out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.